There's one piece of gear that you should always have with you when you're in the backcountry, and that's a satellite tracker. Out on the John Muir Trail, or JMT, satellite trackers like this Garmin InReach Mini were everywhere. You just couldn't help but notice how many people carried them. There are other brands. This happened to be the most common. I have an older model, but it serves me well. I'm pretty minimalist when it comes to gear, so I don't deal with features I don't use. I've learned how to use mine just for what matters to me. And that means three things. First is tracking, so my wife can know where I am. I use this every time I hike. Second is as a backup texting option when I don't have 4G or 5G service. I use this extensively on the JMT, less often, but still occasionally on the Appalachian Trail. And third is the SOS capability, which fortunately I've never had to use. My wife can log on to a Garmin server and see my whereabouts, at least to the nearest 10 minutes. That gives her confidence that my hike is proceeding normally. Now, there are some technical limitations. On the Appalachian Trail with its green tunnel, the canopy often blocks the signal, and she may not be able to see where I am for a few hours, which does make her nervous. Still, it's a far cry from when my father first brought me out on the trail in 1969, when all we had was a AAA road map with a dotted line on it showing us approximately where the trail crossed major roads. This isn't a review of all these trackers' capabilities. Today, I'll look at when it's appropriate to use the SOS function and when it's not. And I have two questions I'd love your opinions on. In 2022, while hiking south on the Appalachian Trail from Roanoke, Virginia, I slipped on loose rocks about 9 miles north of Damascus, Virginia, and I dislocated my shoulder. It was painful, and I really couldn't use my right arm as a result. I could still walk, so I chose to hike out on my own instead of pressing the SOS. I was risking further damage if I fell again or if I came across any stretch where I needed to use both arms to negotiate, but I felt like I could manage. Always keep this in mind. Any rescue involves risk to the search and rescue team. Even in a relatively benign area like the AT in Virginia, things can and do go wrong, especially if equipment such as stretchers need to be brought in. Here's a video clip I took when I entered Damascus.
Well, folks, I'm walking into Damascus. A little bit of things happened to me out on the trail. Well, on my way here on what should have been a nice day, a 0 day off the trail, all this great stuff, wicked chicken over there, looks really good. It's all really nice. I took a fall though, and slippery rocks, and dislocated my shoulder, which I've done before. It really requires that I be immobilized for a month. I mean, I can tell, I can hike with it. I hiked about 9 miles. It did sort of pop back in place, but I can't depend on it.
The shoulder popped back in, so the next day I took a short slack pack hike from Damascus to the Tennessee border. I needed a moral victory. At least I could knock Virginia off my list of states completed, even though my original intent was to go all the way to Springer Mountain. On that slack pack hike, I ran into a younger hiker who told me he'd done that 480 miles of trail south of there, and there weren't any parts where you needed both arms. I just laughed to myself. When I went back the next year to hike from Springer Mountain to Damascus, I found plenty of rocky scrambles that would have been dangerous without the use of my arm. Advice without context is just noise, something I'll go over in a future video. What works for a 25-year-old with no injury just doesn't apply to a 64-year-old with a bad shoulder. So here's my first question. Was I being foolish to hike out on my own? If you have any medical training or search and rescue experience, I'd especially like to hear your thoughts. Like I said, the trail there is rather benign, but I had no good idea of what I was faced with since I hadn't hiked there before. I really couldn't use my right arm or the trekking pole. It was a struggle, but I did make it without further incident. Now let's visit another situation. I met a hiker who had seizures. Trackers were a new development back then when I met him, and I didn't even know about them. He told me if I ever came across him having a seizure, I should press his SOS button and a rescue team would show up and help him. My first reaction was, this technology empowers people with medical conditions to get out into the backcountry, which is great. On further reflection, I think relying on an SOS call by a stranger as your first line of defense isn't a plan, it's a gamble. It also puts search and rescue teams in danger just by definition. All rescues come with risks and economic costs as well. It seems to me that it would be more responsible to hike with someone who knows what to do if a seizure occurs, instead of just waiting for a random stranger to call for rescue after the fact. A companion could be trained to recognize when a true emergency is occurring, and they could judge when to call for help. Now, I personally don't have any experience dealing with seizures, so I don't know if this is even reasonable. But know this, it takes time to organize and respond to an SOS call. Help may be hours away even in the best of circumstances. SOS is for when you're truly out of options, when you're unable to get yourself to safety and your life or health is seriously at risk. That's a very delicate call because there's a danger you'll call for help too late. The SOS can be a lifesaver, and there are plenty of cases of hikers dying on the trail when they could have been saved if they had this device or another like it. So what's your opinion of this situation? I'm not suggesting that the hiker should give up doing what he loves, but I see it as analogous to hiking while older. We all need to accommodate our limitations in a responsible manner. I don't think using the SOS as the first reaction, go-to response is the best choice or even effective. Let me know in the comments what you think. If you think I'm way off base, let me know. Remember that these trackers are tools, not magic bullets. If having it makes you less cautious and overconfident and you take risks you might not otherwise take, then please rethink that activity. Use your head, use your gear wisely, and stay safe out there. I hope you've been given something to think about. If you appreciate this content, please like, share, subscribe, and comment on this topic or others you'd like me to cover. And if you haven't seen this video, I recommend you take a look at it now. Thanks for listening.